Helaena.
I do not know about you, but for me, this was easily one of the best episodes House of the Dragon has ever given us. This was really all about the dragons and our one favorite dragon dreamer who left our jaws on the floor by letting us experience her dreams and prophecies through her lens. Honestly, if there is one character in this show who I would help escape all this violence, bloodshed, and chaos, it would be Helaena. Our sweet and innocent Targaryen princess is an empath in the truest sense. All she has ever wanted was to get away from the politics of the Red Keep and raise chickens in a faraway land. But instead, she is forced to live in captivity all her life, first by the Greens and now by the Blacks. Neglected by almost everyone around her, Helaena has been plagued by the burden of prophetic dreams from a very young age. And while we have only heard of them through the art she creates or the random cryptic statements she makes through the Dragon in Winter, we get to understand it firsthand just how strong her visions are. It is truly as unnerving as it is beautiful, especially because all of Helena's collective dreams throughout the show always signify some kind of loss, be it the inevitable fall of her family or just Westeros in general. Nobody has taken the princess seriously until Rhaenyra realized that she was indeed a dragon dreamer, and in this episode, the queen almost harasses her to spit up whatever she knew of the future. This episode explains why Helaena has never seen riding her dragon, and also foreshadows what will happen by the end of this show, while also stretching out another connection to Aegon the Conqueror's dream of a song of ice and fire. So, without wasting another moment, let's discuss what Helena's dream really means for the future of the Dance of Dragons.
You may refuse me as your sister, but I may compel you as your queen. Now tell me what you know.
At this point in the show, I am no longer swaying between the Green or the Blacks. In fact, the only team I will be cheering for will either be Team Dragon, where all dragons simply stop being used as pawns by their human riders, or Team Helaena, where the princess puts an entire realm's distance between herself and her toxic family, so she can happily raise chickens and chase butterflies in the sun. Alas, in the world of Westeros, nothing can ever come close to being this perfect. At this point, it is not even a spoiler that everyone we see in the show is meant to die, and that includes the beautiful dragons and our sweet Helaena. The princess has had to deal with a self-serving mother who has not even stopped at sacrificing her own children and grandchildren in order to save her skin. It was Alicent who pushed Helaena to marry her brother Aegon, despite knowing the kind of pest that her son is. Maybe if she had agreed to betroth her daughter to Rhaenyra's oldest son, Jacaerys, all of this infighting and bloodshed could have been avoided. But instead, Helaena has to deal with a husband who never cared for her, and of course her other brother, who is just a diabolical sociopath. While her family usurped her throne to bring her husband to power, it was Helaena who had to pay this price, as her young son, Jacaerys, was brutally decapitated by assassins sent by Daemon to kill Aemond after he led to the death of Rhaenyra's son, Lucerys. Even when she had the fleeting hope of escaping this life after Rhaenyra took King's Landing, her dream of raising chickens with her daughter in a faraway land was derailed after the Queen's men caught them before they could leave King's Landing. For the moment, after Rhaenyra sent Alicent to Harrenhal to kill Aemond, Helaena has found herself to be trapped, alone, and pregnant. In fact, the girl cannot even catch a break while in her sleep, as her dreams never stop plaguing her. The kindest and purest character in the show is in the middle of a mess that she played no part in, and for that, my heart truly breaks for her. Having said that, Helena's proven track record when it comes to seeing the future is something that has been developed for her character, specifically in the show, which means that there is a high chance that her fate might turn out to be very different as opposed to how it played out in George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood. The sad but interesting prophetic dreams that Helaena experiences in this episode only reinforces that theory. Throughout the 7th episode of Season 3, Helaena has 4 dreams, which the first one happening right at the beginning of the episode and the other 3 being interconnected dragon dreams that she experiences in one sequence while sleeping for the night. I am going to break these visions apart as we discuss what they are actually foreshadowing, starting with the Grey Mare vision. The latest episode literally opens inside one of Helena's dreams, which shocks us all because we see her roaming an empty courtyard outside of the Red Keep while standing next to a pale gray horse hitched onto a wagon. This comes as a shock, especially because Helaena has been confined by Rhaenyra inside the keep, so it is very unlikely that she can access the outside of the castle without any guards in sight, that too during a time when dawn is about to break through. She slowly wanders towards the horse and starts petting it with a smile on her face before the gates of the castle open before her and her attention is drawn towards the golden light of the sun dousing her face. Before we could figure out anything else, Helaena is woken up by Rhaenyra's voice intruding on her dream and forcing her to look away from that light as her eyes glisten with unshed tears. After her conversation with Alicent, Rhaenyra understood that Helaena has the rare magical ability to dream of the future, and while it may sound like a gift, we have all seen just how miserable it makes life for those who bear the burden of knowing what the future upholds. I mean, just take Prince Daeron, the drunk from a night of the Seven Kingdoms, who had to resort to alcoholism to cope with his dreams. Compared to that, Helaena is pretty much just raw-dogging life with everything that is being pelted at her. As we see, Rhaenyra has gotten so desperate that she has now stooped down to threatening Helaena into divulging everything she sees in her dreams. While Helena's answers do not provide the satisfaction that Rhaenyra was looking for in order to pacify herself on the assurance of her reign, she does get the confirmation that Helaena did get asked by Aemond to ride Dreamfire into battle, but she refused, as she did want her dragon to change her, just like Rhaenyra herself had been altered by all her dragons. As she said, it was all too much for her because, unlike the other Targaryens, she was not enamored by the allure and power that comes with being a dragon rider. However, instead of actually listening to what Helaena had to say, Rhaenyra still kept pushing her to tell her if she would win the war. Now, this particular dream surely feels like Helaena dreaming a way out of her current captive state, but given how the dream ends before we can see what happens after the door opens and the light pours in, it can be assumed that it represents the uncertainty about where Helaena would go if she ever managed to run away from King's Landing. On another note, the existence of the pale gray mare can also be considered to be a subtle foreshadowing of Helena's fate. If we go by the events that occurred in the book, there is not a lot of time before she died by throwing herself out of one of the towers of the Red Keep. Moreover, this scene from the book was seemingly teased every time that we saw her standing near a window. In case you had no clue, the pale mare has been used in the Game of Thrones before, that too as a symbol of death. Yes, I am indeed talking about the time Arya Stark encountered a pale horse in the ruins of King's Landing. Moreover, the sudden burst of light coming from behind the doors could symbolize for Helaena to face the great beyond. Maybe that is why her eyes had welled up when Rhaenyra's voice woke her up. Maybe she knew exactly what her dream meant. The sadness in her eyes surely does not come from a place of fear, but maybe from the life she yearns to live, away from all the political violence. The traumatic childbirth dream. As you know, Helaena is currently pregnant, and the vision she has of childbirth truly seems to be a horrifying premonition of what Alicent told her would happen if she chose against aborting it. In this dream, we see Helaena almost manifest her very understandable fear of what would happen if she ended up giving birth to a son. In the dream, Helaena is in active labor and is screaming while giving birth to her son, Maelor. But before she could even hold the baby in her arms, it is whisked away by the Queen's guard, who mindlessly takes the infant away in front of a helpless Helaena. Now, we do not know if the baby was being taken away to be killed or to be held hostage, but we do know that the birth of Aegon's son directly jeopardizes Rhaenyra's reign. Alicent was right when she said that Rhaenyra would have to either kill the baby or take it hostage so as to prevent another threat to her legitimacy as the queen. Now, in Fire and Blood, Helaena actually did have a third son after Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, but he was born before Jaehaerys was murdered by Blood and Cheese, which means Maelor was a toddler during the book's version of the events. Apparently, House of the Dragon cut out Maelor's character from Season 2 in order to simplify the plot, and that was not something that George R.R. Martin took sportingly. as he made sure to express his contempt in a blog post that has now been removed. However, it looks like Ryan Condal seems to be making good on that error by adding Helaena's pregnancy as a major plot point in Season 3. In the original version of the events, it was the news of her toddler being torn apart by a mob wanting to gain Rhaenyra's favor that pushes Helaena over the edge. In fact, it gets so bad that she commits suicide after learning about Maelor's tragic death. So, I think this prophetic dream foreshadows what will happen after Helaena gives birth to her child. Of course, I doubt that Rhaenyra would do anything that would lead to the immediate death of an infant, but either way, some cruel fate is in store for the child, as the dream itself foreshadows how Maelor will be doomed from the very second he is born. The vision of Helaena riding Dreamfire. So, in the third dream within this sequence, we see Helaena wearing her dragon rider clothes inside the same dragon pit where Aegon was hastily crowned as the new king after the death of Viserys. Not just that, she was saddled on top of a purple dragon with glowing scales, and, by the looks of it, this was none other than Dreamfire, the same dragon who was assumed to be the mother of the 3 dragons hatched by Daenerys during the events of Game of Thrones. There is also something different about Helaena in this scene, as she appears to be much more fierce and screams Dracarys when an angry mob comes charging into the dragon pit towards Dreamfire. It is almost as if we see a militant version of her, which is truly a far cry from the non-threatening and shy young woman we have known throughout the show. This dream is surely foreshadowing the storming of the Dragon Pit, which is easily one of the most important events in Westerosi history, as the citizens of King's Landing rise against Rhaenyra after the city fell into chaos from her ignorance. This led thousands of common people to break into the Dragon Pit and kill all the dragons in the hopes of ending everything about the civil war that has ruined their lives. Because all the dragons were chained to the pit, they were at a disadvantage, but nevertheless they could still Dracarys the hell out of them and kill countless numbers of attackers. Even then, these humans were absolutely relentless in their mission, and so they killed every last dragon in the dragon pit one by one. In the book, Dreamfire was the last to fall after fighting off hordes of attackers and ultimately breaking free enough to soar into the domed ceiling of the dragon pit before fatally bringing the whole structure down upon herself and the attackers. Still, in the storming of the dragon pit, the small folk wipe off all Targaryen dragons housed at King's Landing. Because the show is aiming to change Helena's fate, I think we will see her fighting back the people trying to kill dragons, and that is how she might meet her end, instead of dying by impaling herself on spikes after jumping from Maegor's holdfast. As you know, the unreliable narrators sourced in Fire and Blood had suggested that Helaena was devastated by the murder of her son Maelor and leapt to her death. Meanwhile, other people claimed that she was murdered on Rhaenyra's orders, which only fueled the slow brewing contempt that the masses held against the queen. Now, I personally believe that the show will depict Helaena to allow herself to be reconnected to her dragon and finally accept the inherent violence that is expected out of any Targaryen, which would make her cruel enough to burn the people trying to kill all dragons for crimes committed by the monarchs. She will have to channel her inner warrior in order to stand up for the dragons. However, if the show does not drop the book's ending of Helena's mysterious death, then she might indeed commit suicide after learning of Maelor's fate. In that case, she would have to die before the storming of the dragon pit, so maybe her vision of riding Dreamfire might just be Helaena trying to connect with the dragon at the time of the creature's demise, or sensing her death from the afterlife when the dragon pit is stormed. Either way, I really hope to see the warrior queen version of this event, because I am not ready for Helaena to meet such a tragic and hopeless end. The final vision is what connects her dream to the song of ice and fire. So the fourth dream is where things get a bit more abstract, because Helena's final vision feels nothing short of a fantasy, as we see her and her children sitting on the lush grass outside a quaint house while playing with the chickens she always dreamt of having. The kids seem to be her twins, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, and both of them seem to be rather grown up. And not just that, there is again a pale mare we see grazing behind Helaena as she tends to her chickens. But then this idyllic scene immediately fades as Helaena stands up to the side of the moon, eclipsing the soon as cold winds keep howling out of darkness. Strangely strangely enough, we see how there is snow falling upon the farm just moments after the golden warmth of the sunshine vaporizes, only to be replaced by the wind that keeps growing louder and louder until the scene ends. Of course, this dream foreshadows the arrival of the Long Night and the White Walkers, who aim to wipe out all of humanity. It is truly the details of this dream which makes it a lot deeper than it appears to be. I think the biggest hint here is the presence of Helena's dead son Jaehaerys, who had already died as a toddler during the blood and cheese incident in season 2. Since the boy in her vision seems to be much older and is also the same age as the girl, I think it is safe to assume that these were the twins. But how come Jaehaerys is all grown up here? Well, do you remember the symbolism of the pale mare that we previously discussed? Well, it is obviously a symbol of death, and so I think in this vision, Helaena, Jaehaerys, and Jaehaera have all died, and this cozy farmland setting is Helena's version of what heaven or a peaceful afterlife looks like to her. In that context, Helena's dream may be suggesting that the White Walkers will not engulf Westeros in death until long after she and her immediate family are gone. By juxtaposing her own tragic fate with the greatest existential threat the realm will ever face, the vision implies that the Long Night belongs to a future generation. Helaena, her children, and even the civil war that tears House Targaryen apart will all become part of history before the White Walkers descend upon the Seven Kingdoms. In that sense, the dream serves as both a reminder of Westeros's ultimate destiny and a poignant indication that Helaena or her family will never live to witness the apocalypse she foresaw. But I think it also helps her understand what role she has to play in the grander scheme of events, which means this will be her motivation to take charge of Dreamfire at the risk of being changed, because if Helaena does not take her place in the larger song of ice and fire, more innocents will perish. So I guess chickens be damned, 'cause the White Walkers are coming. When you take all of these visions together, they seem to paint a haunting progression of death for everyone around her, before the dreams culminate in the greatest death of all, the White Walkers bringing destruction to the entire continent. If Helaena does indeed meet her end in the season 3 finale, then these visions could represent her final glimpse into the future, thus revealing the tragic destinies of herself, her children, and even Dreamfire. While not every dream points directly to a specific death in the same way Dreamfire's vision appears to, the overall pattern suggests a steady march from one loss to another, each one building toward Westeros's ultimate apocalypse. Having said that, that is really just my personal interpretation. And because prophetic dreams in A Song of Ice and Fire have always been cryptic, symbolic, and open to multiple readings, much like dreams in the real world, it should all be taken with a grain of salt. Now, tell me, what is your crazy interpretation of Helena's dreams in the House of the Dragon? Let us know about your thoughts and theories in the comment box below.